Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, welcome to the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities. I'm June No, your MC of the today's session. It's already the last session. I would like to express my deep gratitude to participants who have been with us for a long time. So then let's start our last session. Now I will pass the mic to Mr. Mark West, the moderator of today's session. Mr. Mark West, are you connected?
I am. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me? I'm connected.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So shall I assume moderation of the event? Is that okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Greetings, everybody. I'm joining you from Paris, France, where UNESCO is headquartered. But very pleased to be welcoming you to the session of the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities. This session will be looking at technology-enhanced learning for healthy populations. We have a few different speakers, or as I understand, we have a couple of different speakers with us, and I hope to allow them to introduce themselves. But I just wanted to speak a little bit about our topic here and our objectives for the session. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic was a disruption for cities around the world. It was first and foremost a disruption to health, but obviously also a major disruption to education. So during this panel, we will be looking at some of the solutions that people work to roll out to minimize the the educational disruption of the pandemic. And also to look at not only what worked, but what did not work and what lessons we can draw from this experience. So with that, I believe I'm joined by panelists. I cannot see them in my meeting space, but I would like to invite Mrs. Jasmine Hill to introduce herself. And Ms. Hill, as I understand, is joining us from Australia. Ms. Hill, if you're here, if you could please provide a brief introduction. Thank you. Ms. Hill, are you with us today? You're muted, Ms. Hill.
Hi, sorry, I'm here.
Excellent. Ms. Hill, I was just hoping you could provide a brief introduction. We're just doing some preliminary introductions for this panel. If you could just introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll move into some of our substance. Thank you.
Introduce myself. Give me 1 sec. Sorry, where's my... Okay.
No problem. Just a little bit about who you are and what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm a Wyndham City councillor, and I chair the Learning City portfolio in Wyndham. I come from a science, technology, engineering, maths background, and I have a PhD in electrical engineering from the United Kingdom. And I have about 15 years experience teaching and research from Malaysia originally, in UK, Shanghai, Australia. And I'm a secondary school teacher in Wyndham. I teach physics, computing, engineering, and mathematics subjects. And I speak a few different languages, Malay, Chinese, English. And yeah, I have a long record of involvement in the community as well in Wyndham. And I've been involved in children and youth education, connecting, empowering women. That's my passion, assisting new migrants settling in and integrating into Australian culture. And yeah, supporting youth, seniors, young mothers, the disadvantaged, and starting and supporting not-for-profit charity organizations in my city. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Hill, and thanks for joining us from Australia. Our next speaker is Mr. Meng Hui. Mr. Hui, if you could please briefly introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to join today's meeting. It's my great honor to participate in the UNESCO's program here, and my name is Meng Hui, and I'm the Chief Director of Wuhan Education Bureau, and actually my hometown is in the Jiangsu province, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to have a discussion with all of you and share some experience of Wuhan City with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hui. Our next speaker is Ms. Katja Donner. If you could please introduce yourself, Ms. Donner. Thank you. Ms. Donner, are you with us? Okay. I think Ms. Donner may not be able to join us today, but not a problem. We'll move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Mansour Arjan excuse me, I'll probably mispronounce the name, Bornian, from Qatar. Sir, if you could please briefly introduce yourself. Thank you. Mr. Mansour, are you with us? Okay. Sorry, Mr. Mansour may not be with us. And then finally, the last planned panelist for this event is Mr. Luis Gonzalez Arenal, joining us from Mexico. Mr. Arenal, would you like to briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know if you can see me. I am here in I am in Korea right now. I'm going to turn around so you can see me now.
Okay.
And, I am the executive coordinator of the network of Mexican learning cities. I'm an architect. I'm also the focal point of Puebla as a city of design of UNESCO, and I'm in the group of experts of innovation and creativity at UNESCO also, and always pushing for learning and as a solution, I think, to almost all the problems in the world. I say every time I can that I'm powered by learning. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Arnaud, and I like that expression, powered by learning. We'll have to remember that. Well, wonderful. I think we have a very nice lineup of speakers here. And so with that, our format today is each of our speakers will have 8 minutes to deliver a presentation. Again, the presentations will look at some of the approaches that cities rolled out to the challenges presented by the educational disruption of the pandemic. And then we'll have a bit of time for some exchange following these 8 minutes interventions. So with that, I would like to turn the floor back to Ms. Jasmine Hill. Ms. Hill, the floor is yours. Looking forward to learning about approaches in Australia. Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I can't see my presentation slides. Okay, give me one sec. I try to switch to my presentation slide.
Excuse me, Mark, you forget someone.
Thank you. Thank you. It's thank you very much. This is thank you. Sorry, Miss Hill. We'll come right back to you.
No problem.
But also understand that Mr. Pascal Chatignon is with us from France. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir? Thank you.
Bonjour, heureux d'être avec vous.
Yes. Hello, I'm very pleased to be with you here from Évry-Coqueronne. I'm Pascal Chatignon. I'm the Deputy Mayor of the town of Évry-Coqueronne. I am in charge of the Learning City, the associations and local services. I'm also in charge of the local participative democracy, and I've always been a real believer in popular learning and lifelong learning for all. I'm also part of a movement here in France, which is a mutual learning exchange network.
Excellent. Bonjour, and thank you for joining us. Great to have you here. So again, Ms. Hill, back over to you for your intervention. We look forward to learning about, again, the approaches in Australia. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Okay, so I can't really see the presentation slides. Okay, I assume the first slide is up. Firstly, I wish to acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built. I would also like to acknowledge the UNESCO committee, the mayor of Yongsu City, all the mayors, councillors, and council representatives, and all the distinguished guests here tonight. I have very much enjoyed hearing from some of the presenters during this conference, and would like to particularly thank the organizer from the city of Yongsu for hosting this excellent event. Thank you so much to the UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning for inviting me to speak to you this evening and to share Wyndham's experience of using technology to improve lifelong learning in our city, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Second slides, please. I would like to start by giving you a brief overview of our city. Most people must have heard of Melbourne, but many might not have heard about Wyndham. Wyndham is located to the west of Melbourne. We have a population of 300,000 people. While Melbourne is Australia's second largest city, Wyndham has the second fastest growing population in Australia. The people in Australia are very well looked after by its social welfare, which includes free public education and free public health services. In terms of lifelong learning, in Wyndham, we have 17 community centers for lifelong learning and 5 libraries. In line with the topic we are focusing on today, which is about technology, our country has 94% of students using computers at schools, and we are ranked 8 in terms of our students' accessibility to technology at schools in the world. Slide 3, please. Our community is also very young, with 2 largest age groups being 0 to 4 years old and 30 to 34 years old. Wyndham community is a culturally diverse community with residents made up of more than 162 countries, speaking 130 languages. Our growing migrant populations have brought high level of education with them. For example, in some area in Wyndham, we have the highest population of postgraduate holders in Melbourne, many of which involving IT and technology-related work. We have 60 public and private schools in Wyndham, which council collaborate closely with. Because of our growing population, there is a need to have more education providers, universities, and colleges in the city of Wyndham. As a council, we take the challenge of improving education opportunities for our community very seriously, and we are working hard in this space. And I will now explain further. Slide 4, please. Slide 4, thank you. The key to being a learning city is collaboration, which is why we are all here today. Wyndham's work as a member of UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities is driven by our learning community strategy. The strategy focuses on celebrating living and learning in Wyndham, advocating for equality and quality in service provision, facilitating partnerships and collaboration across sectors, and finally, innovating learning and fostering new entrepreneurial spirit. While I could talk about any one of the 18 different actions that the strategy action plan includes, my focus for today is on how Wyndham is optimizing technology-enhanced learning for healthy populations. I won't be focusing on strategies, but I will be focusing on some practical examples of what our city has done during COVID. Slide 5, please. In March 2020, COVID-19 hit Australia. Schools, kindergartens, TAFE, which is our technical colleges, and universities were all impacted and moved into remote learning. Students adapted to virtual classrooms and the use of online platforms for learning resources. The pandemic put pressure on our health and education systems. I had a first-hand experience as a local city councillor and a secondary school teacher. Teachers recorded videos to be streamed online and taught virtually over online platforms such as Canvas, Zoom. We did face difficulties. Some students have limited internet access. Some students have to share a computer with their siblings. Some parents lost their jobs during COVID, which added pressure to the home study environment, which is very sad. Despite the challenging time of remote learning and teaching, students adapted the new way of learning. Some students continue, surprisingly, to excel with the flexibility of school timetable, more independence, and student-directed learning. Despite the difficulty, the city remained positive and reached out to one another. Council organized online meetings on Zoom to reach out to the communities. Council officers, councillors were in constant contact, checking in with the leaders in the community who reach out to their own community groups to check in to ensure everyone is okay. Council provided tangible support such as food bank for those who are in quarantine. Council started a new hotline called Community Connector to reach out to anyone in need. A new hotline, anyone in need, and social media platforms such as Facebook were used to connect to the community. Through our school principals network, the City of Wyndham reached out to the school communities and ensure they had the necessary resources, providing for the health and well-being of our learning community. Wyndham, as part of the metropolitan Melbourne, has been through 6 lockdown periods, totaling 260 days. However, our community have pulled together to cooperate and persevere through this lockdown. COVID-19 has had a major impact on the way we learn in Wyndham. As a result, technology has become essential for learning and remote teaching. Slide 6, please. Digital inclusion is critical to maximizing and sharing the benefit of the digital revolution. Wyndham libraries offer free public Wi-Fi and a range of digital platforms, trainings, resources, and online safety courses to ensure everyone in the community can participate and benefit. Our use of technology has enabled us to adapt to the challenges posed by the pandemic. Council introduced an expanded home library service, which is shown in this picture, that delivered library books to the local residents in a COVID-safe manner. Our e-library services also provide free access to full catalog of books, audiobooks, e-magazines, and learning resources. Some of that numbers of e-resources, those numbers are presented here on the slide, which shows the love of our residents in Wyndham to learning. Slide 7, please. Popular pre-COVID digital literacy workshops that had offered community members a tailored opportunity for device help and help many technology newcomers to get connected were switched to a phone help service at the start of the pandemic to assist people to get online. Instructional videos on getting connected to the internet, staying safe on the internet, underlying your digital device and library e-resources are offered on library YouTube channels to write for people from all ages and backgrounds. Importantly, the support to be digitally connected and literate is continuing, ensuring continuing resilience and access and equity. An important avenue in our city for providing digital literacy and STEM education is the Wyndham Tech School, which provides a platform for primary and secondary school teaching online workshops. All of these online resources have been extremely popular during COVID, which goes to show how eager our community is to continue learning during this difficult time. Next slide, slide 8, please. COVID has reinforced Council's commitment to teaching, to technology in learning. Among other things, I would like to highlight some of the major events, such as the Winnovation event, the Wyndham Learning Festival, the Education Roundtable. After COVID hit, many events moved online, which Council continued to embrace new opportunities, such as the Learning and Earning Festival, the Global Learning Festival. These two festivals were initiated during pandemic. Slide 9, please. A conference like tonight gives us all a chance to reflect on how learning has and will evolve after pandemic. Do we want to revert back to the old style of learning? Next slide, please. Slide 10. In conclusion, COVID has driven the uptake of new technology in the provision of lifelong learning and resilience of Wyndham City. In my humble opinion, we should embrace this opportunity moving forwards with the increased usage of digital platform, developing our own hybrid learning models to enhance learning in our cities. Going forward, Wyndham City would like to continue our commitment to lifelong learning by strengthening digital literacy and adopting new learning strategies. For example, Wyndham City Council this year has adopted a new strategy in response to the pandemic called Resilience Wyndham Strategy. Slide 11, please. Next slide, yeah. One of the advantages of digital platform is that we are all neighbors. We are very happy to be part of UNESCO Learning Cities network and share experiences. I look forward to more collaborations between cities around the world through this network. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hill. Really appreciated that intervention and learning about the approaches that were used in your city. And it sounds like indeed quite a severe disruption with many lockdowns and several days of school closure, over 60 you mentioned. But thank you for sharing some of those approaches, and a real privilege to be able to learn from your experiences. Thank you. I've been informed that we have also been joined by another speaker. Ms. Katja Schaefer is also with us. Katja, would you like to just very briefly introduce yourself, just so our panelists have an idea of who's with us? And after your introduction, we will move to Mr. Hui for his introduction. So Katja, just a few words of introduction. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm connecting from Berlin, from my home office. I'm working with UN Habitat, the United Nations Human Settlements Program, based in Nairobi, in fact. And I'm representing basically in my lead function, the United Nations Innovation Technology Acceleration for Cities. And in fact, I'm also leading UN Habitat's global program on people-centered smart cities, and also on inclusion and urban regeneration. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion, and at the end, I hope maybe I can conclude some of the points that have been raised from the perspective of cities. Thank you very much, Mark, for giving me the chance to introduce myself.
Excellent. Very glad to have you with us, Ms. Schaefer. Thank you so much. We'll now move to Mr. Hui for information about interventions and approaches that were deployed in your area in China. So thank you, Mr. Hui. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning for inviting me and the Yansu City for your thoughtful organization for today's conference. I'm very delighted to take this opportunity to meet with representatives of learning cities. Please turn the page. Wuhan, located in the central China and with a history of 3,500 years, is the capital city of Hubei province and a national central city under construction. Wuhan is known as the thoroughfare of 9 provinces by connecting east and west, and we run north and south. The long history and modern civilization enhance each other's beauty, giving Wuhan profound cultural continuity, spurring creativity, and inspiring learning ability, as well as the Wuhan spirit of pioneering and excellency. Wuhan Municipal Party community and the municipal government have attached great importance to the construction of a learning city over the recent years, taking the lead in establishing a leading group to promote the construction of a learning city nationwide and formulating standards for the establishment of learning organizations to promote the construction of a learning city in party and government organs, enterprises, and public institutions, social organizations, schools, and communities. It has initiated the construction of a city of reading, a city of museum, a city of arts, a city of design, and a city of university, which are 5 aspects to enhance the overall urban cultural atmosphere and improve continuously the urban quality and the image through spiritual guidance and cultural people. Here are some, please turn the page, and here are some of our measures. First, the 24-hour self-service libraries. These libraries have been set up in the most crowded areas, such as river beaches, large communities, traffic spots, central parks, squares, hospitals, and shopping malls, making public books available anywhere. And also we have the first scholarly metro line. Book reading and the recommendation activities have been carried out themed by book recommendation for metro commuters, Metro Book War, Book Charity Bazaar, and the Wuhan Metro Book Club, which are well received by the public. Please turn the page. Lifelong Education Alliance have been established through the formation of many lifelong education alliances, such as the Wuhan Education and the Reading Alliance, Hanyang Tree, College Community Education, Ecotourism Agriculture, Mulan Culture, the service functions of government departments, and high quality education and cultural resources can be developed and shared jointly, making the alliance an important channel for citizens to increase their knowledge and improve their literacy through interaction. The innovative design city, scholarly city, has integrated culture and creative design with learning city to improve citizens' learning awareness and capabilities. It has opened up a new reading space of bookstore plus library, turned the cafe into the mini libraries, made the Dandelion Happy Reading Town enter communities, and changed 108 museums such as Wuhan Museum of Science and Technology, and the Wuhan Industrial Heritage Museum into pluralistic learning places, adding more fun to citizens' learning. Please turn the page. The thematic activity of scholarly Wuhan Public Reading Month have been organized. promoting learning and reading in work units, enterprises, schools, communities, and rural areas. Reading activities such as Zhangcheng Reading Festival, Wuhan Literature Week, Writers into Communities, and the Wuhan Book Fair have been carried out to attract the active participation of the public. A series of academic experts, famous writers, and the inheritors of intangible cultural heritage have been invited to hold a forum for citizens to expose to the public to cultural learning at different levels, categories, and fields. Online reading area and activities such as cloud live stream and cloud reading have been planned, and the free electronic reading packages have been distributed to the citizens to meet their needs of participating in learning and interactions. At the same time, to help special people to participate in learning, the Passing the Flame intelligent listening plan have been formulated to provide a pleasant reading experience for readers with visual impairment. Up to now, we have provided more than 20 terabytes of audiobooks for blind readers. Wuhan's City of Reading, City of Design, Scholarly Wuhan, Scholarly Subway, and the Wuhan Education Reading Alliance have all been selected into the National Lifelong Learning Brand Project, and we also won the honor of top 10 in China. All of our efforts are largely and warmly welcomed by our citizens and the public, especially those people with impairment. Please turn the page. During the pandemic in 2020, we have mobilized 13 district-level community education colleges, 160 neighborhood township community schools, and 1,936 neighborhood community, village, teaching points, schools to carry out all-around online learning services by producing public beneficial video through digital learning platforms such as Classroom on the Air and the Cloud Classroom for lifelong learning on the use of smartphone, safety protection, popular science, health, health preservation, calligraphy, and painting, and also photography, and so on for the elderly. With selected courses, teachers, recording venues, facilities, and the equipment and the communication platforms. So overall, there are 413 newly developed and constructed information on courses of pandemic prevention and control, psychological counseling, and through Wuhan Lifelong Learning Network and a similar online learning platform like WeChat public account and 119 digital learning community, pushing learning information to citizens through the official learning platforms of the member of the Learning City Construction, carrying out activities such as cloud classroom, cloud training, and cloud showcasing, and providing education, training, and learning services such as online classes to the home and a micro course on phone during the process of Wuhan Humanity on Cloud. Improve the network platform, optimize the facilities and equipment, integrate learning resources by to build a learning sharing circle for residents through the cooperation of education, civil affairs, science and technology, culture, health, sports, and other departments. Distinguished representatives and all dear friends, Wuhan different every day. Welcome to Wuhan. As a member city of the GNLC, Wuhan will continue to work with the partner cities to promote the construction and the development of the learning city together and jointly create a wonderful city of learning. Let's work together to create a better future for all of our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hui. A real privilege to learn about the different approaches that were used in Wuhan and all the different ways to reach learners of different ages and across life. So thank you for sharing those initiatives and those various approaches that were used. We'll now move to our next speaker, and that is Mr. Pascal Chatignon. Mr. Chatignon, the floor is yours. Looking forward to learning about your approaches and interventions. Thank you.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Merci. Bonjour à toutes et tous. Donc, juste pour vous resituer, alors, je vais pas vous
Thank you.
faire...
Now, I'd like to welcome you all. I don't want to actually introduce you to the whole of France, but I would like to introduce you to my city, which is Évry-Courcouronnes, which is 30 kilometers south of Paris. It's a city of some 70,000 inhabitants with 15,000 students, and in fact, double that if you think about students actually coming from nursery school all the way up. And as I'd like to say here as well, there's some 70,000 learners in the city, because as far as lifelong learning is concerned, we are all actively involved in the process, and everyone likes to be connected to one another and learn together. So we are a young city, and a city with a lot of people working, a lot of workers, a lot of low earning populations, and we have an approach to learning which is very different from one culture to another, from one group of the population to another. Now, I haven't prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you today, but I will try to talk to you about the various issues that were sent out to us in the form of questions. So with this city, we also suffered under the pandemic, and we had to actually react quickly, and we mobilized all of the local administration to actually react and see how we can maintain the learning process for the young people and the less young people in our city. We are able then to highlight the importance of new technologies and remote learning using different within a different context. So we have already had these technologies a bit in our schools and in our colleges, because we had broad campaigns for equipping our schools and our amphitheaters with digital blackboards or whiteboards and computers, so that people could actually use those as early as possible in their education. But we saw that the problem really was at home, and that many of these tools were not used at home for many reasons. But they were actually used more, not for education, but for playing, for watching films, for online shopping, but not used for education. So from the very first lockdown, the city itself was able to give to 100 different families in the city who were actually more vulnerable and who were lacking digital tools. We were able to give them laptops, and we were able also within the local administration to give computers that weren't being used at the town hall or weren't being used by the administration. We're able to actually make them available to families, the more needy families, so that everyone would have access to these tools and would be able to continue to learn with their teachers, because the teachers at that stage were starting to do online lessons and remote teaching. So they needed to have this material, this hardware. And this was all possible thanks to the mobilization of a whole network within the city. This is a network which has existed for some time, but it was a network which needed a bit of a boost. And so I think that someone spoke already about the importance of cooperation and collaboration between the various bodies within the administrative systems. And it's true that we actually focused a lot on cooperation. There was a real mobilization of all stakeholders and all parties. And often we talk about the institutions themselves, the town hall, the administration, but we also were able to bring on board civil society organizations and associations. That's also something which is well developed here in France, and something that a part of the society which really, really did mobilize. There was a great great connectivity or partnership between the schools and the companies and the young people at university who didn't have the necessary hardware at home. They were helped by our partners. So we did actually try to mobilize all of our resources for the young people in the city. So this mobilization, and it was really first and foremost focused on families, and this was also a learning experience, because we had to work out how we were going to actually be able to disseminate the information for using these tools. And so we established a hotline. We set up a hotline which would enable people to actually call in, and people in the town hall were trained as to how to answer the queries that we got. And I think someone already spoke about the existence of mediatheks and libraries, and we had to think about how we could continue using our resources and how we could continue to make sure that culture and learning was still possible for everyone by using online technology and having online conferences and things like that. So these experiences were not necessarily things that were organized by the institutions, but by associations, for example, and also by people from the media or from cultural organizations. And we accompanied them simply by in how they set up these experiments and these actions. So it was a great experience of cooperation and interaction, and enabled us to cooperate all together. And the next question that you raised was how these cities can guarantee equal access to new technologies. And for a number of years now, the French administration has been working towards the democratization of access to new technologies. In fact, 15 years ago in our city, we set up public digital spaces, which enabled inhabitants to actually have access to this technology if they didn't have it at home, that they were able to have access to these type of tools elsewhere. And then the residents actually could bring things home, or they could actually get their own equipment. But the city today in Évry-Courcouronnes has actually now tried to enhance access to new technologies by developing a number of projects with associations and other bodies. As I talked about our participation earlier on in these cooperative actions, and this was very important. This coordination meant that we were able to make more things to increase the supply of contact points, because in the poorer areas of our city, people aren't necessarily going to actually have the reflex to use this type of tool or have that type of learning tool. So it was important that we had councillors or centres which were able to help the people where they lived. And indeed, with confinement, we saw how important it was that we had to multiply the relay points to provide access to digital tools. We have structures within the various town halls or community centres, so that residents would have access to these resources not far from where they lived. We saw that during COVID, even though children might have had online teaching through the laptops that they were given or that they'd been lent, to get documents and then to print them out, it was not that easy. They didn't all have printers at home. These are all very, very practical things, but things that we had to work on. So we worked along with associations and the local bodies to say that people could actually go into the schools and get those documents printed so that they could carry on their learning experiences. And we also had to support them financially. That's also one of our roles, the associations and the mediatheks, which provide this type of workshop, this type of training in using digital tools. So we had to find out where the need was and improve the access to these tools. And we worked closely also on how we could support the teachers and give them provide them with training courses for the new situation that they found themselves in, working with the students in a remote manner. Now, I am in the Essonne department of France. This is where we are geographically speaking. This is where Évry-Courcouronnes is, and we are giving all students at the end of primary, so they're only 12 years of age, but at the end of their primary school, we're giving them all laptops. So there's 100 different secondary schools in our department, and we're able to provide them with these tools so that they're able to use them already at home. Because what we saw also during the confinement was that in many families, they might have this like type of smartphone. They might have that, but they don't necessarily have laptops. And many children during the confinement had to do their homework on these little smartphones, and they weren't actually made for that. So by enabling us to provide computers to all these children has enabled them to work at home. So we also created these digital hubs so that people involved in the digital world were able to get together and exchange views and be able to set up also training courses for the residents of Évry-Coqueyron to make sure that they were able to have access to this new technology. Now, has the greater use of new technology improved learning in different contexts? Well, we have seen that since the arrival of, well, it's not really new technology anymore, is that we can't really say it's new tech, but since this kind of digitalization has come into the mainstream, we know it's useful for learning. And I think today we can see that we're all together, we're all working together at this global conference with people from right across the world. We've got people from very far away, and we're able to exchange our views here thanks to this new technology. But this technology, indeed, this technology does have advantages if it's actually used correctly and adapted to the needs for the learning needs. So we have to then develop the tools with people who are involved in the teaching experience. The confinement has shown us that many people using these technical tools weren't using it for learning. They might be using the computers or their smartphones, not necessarily for learning. It could be games, social networks, social platforms, it could be online shopping, but they didn't really understand the capacity that these tools had for learning. They didn't understand how they could be used for learning. And in many families, I've seen this in the schools throughout my city, they suddenly became aware that this was actually useful to their children and that they too could actually learn through the computers that they had at home. But it's also, I think, obliges us to some extent to actually make sure that the population know how to use them. And this is not something which is commonly taught in our curriculum, or it's not something that people generally learn about at another primary or secondary school level. And also, thanks to the mobilization that we saw, we were able to maintain teaching during the pandemic, because, as you all know, we lost a lot of teaching, face-to-face teaching days. A lot of kids weren't able to carry on their learning process right to the end of the pandemic. But thanks to these tools, we were able to alleviate somewhat the gap, the education gap. A colleague said earlier on that there was a lot of use of Zoom, and we, within the City Hall, we were able to use those tools to learn how to use the tools better and to use things like Zoom. I'm involved in our movement for participative democracy, and we were able to organize many meetings during the confinement, during the lockdown, so that people would be able to work together on projects that were ongoing already. And normally we would actually get together in a local assembly or a local town hall meeting, but we were able to do this on Zoom and making sure that people knew how to use these tools. And what we saw was that a lot of people participated, sometimes when face-to-face meetings aren't as effective, but when they were able to connect from home, when they were able to actually connect on a Zoom call, they didn't have to call in a babysitter, they didn't have to bother about other things. So it's actually quite useful for us. I think we're going to continue with this type of hybrid meeting at the town hall. Some people being present in the actual hall and some at home. And then, what's the next question? Is whether this has made us more resilient to future crises. Well, I think that the lockdowns have actually shown us the need to cooperate, and that is very, very important. We have a number of partners that we work with, but this new dynamic of cooperation and joint creation, that was really important. We had various bodies locally, but also at a national level and an international level, we saw how we could cooperate together. And that was very important because I think it gives rise to a new type of solidarity that is very effective. This more active cooperation between the institutions and civil society, mobilizing our resources for teaching our young people, that was really excellent. Saying, yes, it's something that's very important. We're all concerned and we all really have got to put our, to do our tuppence worth. That was very important. This culture of cooperation is something I want to see survive beyond the pandemic. We are, yes, more resilient because we have developed a means of reacting, and this resilience has enabled us to actually benefit, capitalize upon good practices which are still being used today in many, many ways, like today's webinar. These are all very important learning lessons that we have learned. And we're also going to see within families, they're using digital tools to improve the education of their children. This is something which was implemented during the pandemic, and it's something which is ongoing and something which I think we might need to boost even further. I think now we understand better the role of new technology, and it's really enabled us to make it more accessible to all by developing programs which would teach people how to use this hardware. And many families might need to be accompanied still today in this effort, but I think that we have developed a new dynamic around the digital tools, and it's something which is very important. Can the city,
Mr. Chatagnon, if I could just ask you to wrap up, please, just so that we have time for our final speaker. I understand we have a hard stop. Merci beaucoup, but very interesting.
Bien sûr. Et donc, oui,
indeed, sorry. I will just conclude by saying, well, that all of this has actually brought forth a lot of new knowledge, new competences, new information that we now need to continue to disseminate and have some follow-up and to support this new type of learning. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm sorry if I took too much of your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chatagnon. Very interesting to learn about the approaches, and also very encouraging to hear. You know, we hear a lot about what went wrong during the pandemic with education and learning, but excellent to hear some of the lessons that were learned, and new approaches to participation and civic participation, educational participation, opportunities to build the digital skills of populations. I think this idea of a hotline that you and some of the other speakers have mentioned, where people could get information about how to, better use technology for their learning and their lives. Very, very interesting, very promising, and how some of the learnings from this pandemic period will be carried forward as we hopefully move into a post-pandemic situation. So thank you very much, Mr. Chatagnon, for the intervention. We will now turn our attention to our final speaker. Yes.
Because of the time constraints, so our left speakers should make their speech shortly. Please note that we should conclude our session at 7:15.
Okay.
Means we have only 10 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, so Mr. Arnal from Puebla, thank you very much for joining us. And if you could please make your intervention. And I'm sorry, Mr. Arnal, but if you could maybe keep it to just about 6 minutes or so, and that way we'll just have time to wrap this session and everybody can make it to the closing plenary. Thank you again, Mr. Arnal, for being with us. We look forward to learning from your experiences. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to be very, very brief. I also have to run to another session now, and I'm going to talk mostly about this pandemic being, well, not only a big problem, but also a great opportunity. And in my presentation, which is going to be also very brief, let me see if it works. There you go. Well, the first thing I want to mention is that that big changes in history aren't made by not only aren't made by reflection, but mainly under pressure. And I think this is happening now. Many changes are going on now, and I think we have to take advantage of these changes, this pressure and these changes. Just to put you in a context, Puebla, where I live, It's the fourth largest state in Mexico. Puebla is the fourth largest city. The metro area is about 3,300,000. And the state has a population of more than 6 million people. The student population is more than 2 million students. And what has happened in Mexico is that it has been like a tsunami of digital information and everything. And what has happened in Mexico is that it really speeded up the progress of the future we had in technology and digital communications for about 10 years in 18 months. In Mexico, the use of smartphones has grown 30%, and the purposes for which they are used are mainly studying, access information, and entertainment. But what is something I would like to mention is that there are 126 million mobile lines in Mexico. We are 120 million inhabitants. 116 million are smartphones, but the problem is that almost 500,000 people had to quit their internet service because of the economic conditions. What really happened was that we changed from a different type of dynamics in studying. It used to be something that was completely in one direction. Let me see if I can find. It was just in one direction, and now it became a collaborative exercise because it was done in the family as a teamwork. So as I mentioned, adoption went very fast, 10 years in 8 months, but we have a super big digital divide. The poorest students, the poorest people in Mexico don't have access to this technology, which we made a small survey, and probably we lost about 300,000 students from the school system that were already there, and they left because they didn't have access to information. That's mostly in the public system schools, which are the poorest people. So what we want to do, what we are trying to do is that what we saw was that learning went from a receptive activity at school, which has been like that for about 150 or more years, and to a collaboration, a very collaborative exercise at home with teamwork, with people, with all the family, not only helping the student, but also the family helping all people to get access to information. Also, the family helping teachers that were trying to give their class. So it really changed the way it had worked. The current state of the world, I think has multiple obstacles, but also very good opportunities to change a system that has been more or less the same for 150 years. Working from home has not only been a collaborative experience, but it has been full of new experiences. I think never has been more evident the importance of non-formal learning and learning in the family. And it's also, I think one of the worries could be how do we avoid when the dust settles down, which is, I think is going to take a long time, how do we avoid going back exactly the way we were before, now that the conditions are different and learning for health is more and more evident. What we are doing in Puebla, just to conclude, we have some different platforms. These platforms are for all the family. What we did, they were designed so they can bring them down in their cell phone. They go to a place where they have Wi-Fi, and very easily they can download the whole platform. The main axis is emotional intelligence, because we believe that emotional intelligence doesn't work, nothing else works. And what we have done is we are going the way of gaming. So we are doing all these platforms, very engaging, very captivating, super challenging, and you have to have a lot of levels and many, many things, and we involve the whole family in learning. So we think that we have to push all this kind of learning system as experience, so we can involve the whole family and take advantage of all this digital revolution that came to us very, very big and very, very fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the intervention, Mr. Arnal, and very useful to learn about the perspectives from Puebla and some of what was attempted there. And also, as some of our similar speakers, encouraging to learn that there were approaches which seem to work and things that may change our trajectory into the future. To wrap up our panel, we have Katja Schaefer with us. Ms. Schaefer, if you would like to provide some synthesis and some key takeaways, that would be appreciated. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will keep it brief. And as you said, maybe just to summarize the synthesis of the discussion, and I don't need to run through all the slides because many of our speakers from Australia, China, France, and from Mexico have touched upon the key issue, in fact, that hinders us to address actually the agenda of the digital human rights, which is the digital divide that has occurred and that we have very strongly observed during the global COVID-19 pandemic. As we have seen that internet connectivity is no longer a luxury, but instead a cornerstone to resilient communities. And I would like to just summarize also here from the perspective of cities that are very often overwhelmed to basically steer this whole digital transformation process towards some sustainable urbanization dimension, and what are the elements that maybe we should keep in mind while seeing also, and I would like to refer maybe also to Ban Ki-moon's statement in the onset of the discussion on the Sustainable Development Goals, that in fact sustainable development will be won or lost in cities, as we see the world moving towards a 50% inclination of people living in cities, and we should not in fact also leave the rural hinterland behind in addressing sustainable urbanization. So it's really a systemic approach that I would like to highlight. And for us at UN Habitat, we are working not only with local governments to understand the problem of the digital divide, but also to help cities to speak up at their national levels and with the private sector and civil society entities to basically address such a digital divide. And let me just maybe outline what are key areas, and some of them have been mentioned, what the root causes for such a digital divide are. It's not only I mean, many representatives here have been speaking from the global north, but we should also not forget that in the global south, there is many populations that are basically unseen, unmapped. And it is very important that from a geospatial condition, we understand what internet connectivity means also to informal areas, what are resources and availabilities in rural areas, and even in areas with a specific topography. Do people have access there to infrastructure? Then the whole socioeconomic condition was also highlighted. The access is very often also based on affordability and the understanding of need. Demographic experiences are also important to understand, as you know, maybe often women are left behind in having access to internet. Youth was mentioned, children were mentioned, elderly people were mentioned, but what about peoples with disability or people from marginalized communities in general. So I think an element here, and that I think UNESCO will also strongly endorse this argument in our cultural practices to internet connectivity, but also to, let's say, the literacy element here. And it was touched upon very strongly, the literacy element or the education element for actually making digital transformation a workable solution for resilient communities. And I think as we are learning from this COVID pandemic, it is also important to learn how to address the digital divide in order to reach everyone with a strong human rights agenda or digital human rights agenda behind. It was also mentioned the issue of data. I cannot go deeper into this, but I think for us, it is very important to empower national and local governments to really take this journey forward, to understand and then also to address the digital divide. It was mentioned here also that strategies at city level could help, that link basically urban development plans with a kind of a digital transformation strategy. And then it is also very important to understand what capacities are needed at local level, at city level, to take such decision forward. And I see, Pascal, you are nodding. I think it's not only a challenge for the Global South, but we have also seen many cities, even metropolitan regions, are struggling to take adequate decisions on what are the appropriate technologies for your cities. The private sector is like a tsunami very often for cities, and cities need to decide how to move this forward. So we are planning, in fact, to set up a help desk together with the UN family for cities to ask those questions and get the guidance, in fact, to appropriately address digital transformation, or let's say the digital tsunami in your cities. And thanks for this really wonderful discussion, for the cases and experience you have shared. And we stand ready to help you further if you have questions. And I hand over back to Mark, our moderator. Thanks a lot. And I wish you, in fact, a nice weekend here from Berlin.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer, for those closing remarks and the synthesis. I really agree with you, and mirroring some of your statements. One of my big takeaways from our interventions today is the ways that sort of taking the school out of the equation, despite all of the harm and hardships that entailed, it allowed cities and others to see learning as sort of more deeply embedded in life. You know, the family was involved, that learning was sort of reconceptualized when it moved outside of the school. And we heard from many of our speakers the ways that they sort of thought about learning in a much broader sense, not just merely sort of something that is kept at the school, but something that is part of life and part of a lifelong process. So encouraging to hear some of that. We'd like to close now. I'd like to thank all of our speakers, Ms. Hill, Ms. Hui, Mr. Chatagnon, and Mr. Arnaud for their interventions and sharing their experiences. It's been very useful to learn from you and have this exchange. I'd also like to thank our hosts from Yansu for hosting this important conference. And again, on behalf of UNESCO, UIL, and the Global Network of Learning Cities, thank you very much for joining us. And as I understand, participants will now move to the closing of the event today. So thank you very much, and wishing everybody a good day. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to the moderator, Mr. Mark West, and all speakers for a wonderful session. Now all sessions are concluded. I hope this time could be beneficial to all participants. Thank you for taking your time for our conference. I'm looking forward to seeing you next opportunity. Thank you so much.
Merci, au revoir.